All right, guys, in this video, we're going to be looking at the densities of solids and liquids to help you out to collect some lab data. So the equipment we're going to be using today, I've got an electronic balance right here. I've got some small graduated cylinders. I've got some beakers. I've got some different liquids and some solids as well. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to take this empty graduated cylinder and we're going to find its mass. And so you can record the mass of this empty graduated cylinder in your data table. And then we're going to put some water into this empty graduated cylinder. And then I'll have you guys look at the volume. And you can read the volume in this graduated cylinder from the bottom of the meniscus. And then I'm going to set it on the balance again. And we're going to look at the mass of that water. So you guys will have the volume in the graduated cylinder of water, which you read from the numbers right there from the bottom of the meniscus. And then you had the mass of the container. You had the mass of the container with the water in it. To get the mass of just the water, you'll have to subtract the mass of the container. And then you can use that information, the mass and the volume, to find the density of water. We're going to compare the density of water to the density of some other liquids in this lab. So the next liquid that I have is syrup. And so we'll do the same process. I'm going to take a similar graduated cylinder. They look the same, but they may not be exactly the same mass. So we're going to find the mass of this empty graduated cylinder and record that in your data table. Pause the video anytime you need to write down the numbers. And then we're going to put a sample of the syrup into this graduated cylinder. And I will show you that, and you can record the volume of syrup in this graduated cylinder, again from the bottom of the meniscus. And then we'll set that on our balance. And we can look at the mass of the syrup in this graduated cylinder. And again, you'll use that to calculate the density of the syrup. We're going to do one more thing with the syrup. We're going to find out if it floats or sinks in water. So I have a beaker of water here. I'm going to pour some of my syrup into it. And hopefully you can see that on the video. But it seems like the syrup is pretty much going down here to the bottom of the water. So the syrup sinks in water, and you can see that right here. We're going to see if the density has anything to do with whether something floats or sinks in water. So you guys were able to calculate the density of water. You're able to calculate the density of the syrup with the data that we just collected, and you can see that the syrup sank in water. All right, let's continue. Let's do this for a couple more substances and see if we can draw any conclusions. Get the syrup out of the way. So the next thing I have is vegetable oil. So I've got a container of vegetable oil. I'll get a new graduated cylinder. Again, it has a slightly different mass just because this is a pretty accurate balance, and not all the graduated cylinders are exactly the same. And so we'll get the mass of the empty container, and then we'll add some oil to this container, some vegetable oil to this graduated cylinder. And you can read the volume from the bottom of the meniscus. And then we'll put that on our balance, and you can look at the mass of the oil. And then once we've got the mass there, we can use that information to calculate the density. And we'll take the oil and we'll pour that into a container of water. And we'll see that the oil is floating on top of the water. So oil floats. You can see these big bubbles up here. Those are the oil. And it's floating on water. We'll try to see if the density of oil can help us predict why it floats on water. All right, we're going to continue with two more substances. So I'll get another graduated cylinder, find its mass. And the next liquid we're going to be looking at is isopropyl alcohol. So isopropyl alcohol is our next substance. And so I'll pour a sample into the graduated cylinder. And you can read the volume on the graduated cylinder. Pause the video if you need to get an accurate measurement. And then we'll set that on our balance. All right, and then this one may be a little bit difficult to see because it has kind of the same color as water, but I'm going to try to pour this into water as carefully as I can and see if we see it floating or sinking in water. And it's going to be a little difficult to see, but if I poured it carefully enough, you should be able to see that the isopropyl alcohol is floating on water. There's a little layer that has kind of a slightly different consistency, even though they're both clear, but the isopropyl alcohol is actually floating on top of the water until I mix it too much, and then it'll mix in. All right, and then last substance, we are going to look at a sample of detergent. This is clothing detergent. And so we get a mass of our empty container. And then I'll take that off and I'll fill it with detergent. So we're getting a sample of liquid clothing detergent. I'll hold that up so you guys can see the volume there. It's got a few bubbles in it, but hopefully that'll be accurate enough. And we'll put that on our balance. You get the mass of our detergent. Again, this one might be a little bit difficult for us to see, but we're going to try to pour this in with water. Even though they're the same color, we'll try to see if it floats or sinks. Yeah, and you can see that it is, I think you can see that it is sinking in the water. Some of the bubbles are coming up, but the main part of the detergent did sink down to the bottom of our water there. It will mix in eventually, but it does seem to sink in water. All right, so that's the data you guys need for the liquids. Record that stuff in your data table. Go back and pause the video if you need to, and I'll make a separate video for the solids in this lab.